The text from Lily pinged as I turned off Shore Road. Lily, please be nice. He's nervous about optics. Optics. That's what people say when they mean status. Ethan's place sat on a bluff in York cedar shingles, glass everywhere. The kind of house that pretends it grew out of old money even though the ink on the Series C term sheet is barely dry. I parked my 10-year-old Tacoma beside a row of black SUVs and slipped the small wrapped box into my jacket. Inside the box, my grandfather's brass compass. It points north no matter who's talking. The front door opened before I could knock. A woman in slate gray smiled with her teeth and not her eyes. Welcome. Shoes off, please. Created daft created duet. Sure, I said, peeling out of boots still salted from the docks. Ethan was in the kitchen, islanding like a talk show host. Sleeves rolled, a watch that could pay a semester at UMass. He didn't hug. He assessed. Lily came around the counter and actually did hug me tight, head on my chest like she used to when storms rattled our windows in Portland. I could smell her shampoo over the rosemary lamb. What's that? She asked, tapping the lid of the box. Something steady, I said. For the big day. Ethan's smile thinned. Daniel. He said my name like a password that might fail. Wine. Wine. Water's good. Still or sparkling? I'm a Coast Guard guy, Ethan. Tap is fine. Arian the call intentions. He led us to a dining space where the ocean was framed like a painting. At each place setting, a white cardstock menu with Vale Bennett rehearsal dinner in embossed navy. The centerpiece was a sleek brass sundial, no compass points, just decorative time. We made parade small talk until Ethan cut it. He's efficient like that. Quick housekeeping before everyone arrives, he said. Lily and I finalized the seating chart, vendor access, and family roles. He watched my face the way a clinician watches a lab rat. We're keeping the ceremony intentional, intimate. I'm not a crowd person, I said. You know that. Right, he said, which is why we thought you might be more comfortable. Behind the scenes, limited presence. For Lily's stress levels. Lily's fork paused. Ethan, it's not personal, he added, which is what people say right before it gets personal. You manage night shifts at a seafood place. My board, our investors, people from the hospital system, there are boundaries. There it was. The narcissist way of using boundaries as a weapon, not self-care. I kept my voice flat. A father at his daughter's wedding isn't a PR risk. Let's not escalate, he said, palms up, mock therapist tone. You've been generous, an enabler even. His eyes flicked to Lily. Always rescuing. It confuses roles. I do not attach. Gaslighting, in 3 lines or less. I set the box on the table. This is for Lily. My grandfather carried it through storms off Monhegan. The compass got him home. Ethan didn't touch it. It's rustic. He glanced at Lily. Maybe we hold it back? No need for the old New England fisherman vibe. The aesthetic is coastal, modern. Lily winced. Ethan. He pressed on, gentle like sandpaper. Also tiny administrative thing. We need a clean guest list for the venue's insurance binder and the wire confirmations. Your name complicates some security credentials. I blinked. Security for a wedding? It's a hospital-adjacent crowd. Plus city officials. He sipped his wine. We can celebrate privately later. I'll make it up to you. In my pocket. My phone buzzed again. An email preview from a no-reply address. Val Events. Final guest. Clearance and NDA. I opened it under the table. There it was in writing. Non-essential family may be offered kitchen access passes. No floor presence during vows. Written evidence. The kind lawyers don't like on the wrong side. Daniel. Ethan said softly. We'll set up a bank account for Lily, separate from the joint. Optics again. Clean lines for the will later. Trust instruments. QSBS planning. It's better if finances aren't sentimental. He looked at the compass like it was a problem to optimize out of the slide deck. Here's my boundary, I said. I won't be erased, not by suits, not by NDAs, not by your optics. Color climbed his neck. Then the whisper threat. Let's not make this adversarial. There's a vendor list. Licenses. People who can be helpful or not if this gets messy. Lily's eyes were glassy. Dad, I squeezed her hand once. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm here to show up. The doorbell rang. Voices filled the foyer. Ethan put his host mask back on and drifted toward power. I slid the compass back into my jacket. North doesn't move. People do. On my way out, a different no-reply email landed. Reminder: upload copy of government ID for staff badges. Staff, not family. If he wanted me invisible, I knew how to disappear better than he did. I didn't sleep much that night. The ocean kept slapping the rocks outside my apartment like it had a score to settle. And every sound dragged me back to Ethan's table the way he'd said non-essential family like it was a label on a shipping box. By morning, I'd convinced myself it wasn't worth another thought. I'd show up to the wedding anyway, sit in the back, clap when they kissed, and let it be. But then the email hit my inbox around 9 a.m. Subject line: amendment to guest access policy. It wasn't even from Ethan. It came from his assistant. Corporate phrasing: no warmth. It read, per Mr. Vale's request, only pre-cleared guests with vendor IDs will be allowed on site. Please confirm that Mr. Daniel Brooks will not be attending in a personal capacity. There it was in writing formal erasure. My daughter's wedding reduced to a security perimeter. I forwarded it to Lily with a single line. Did you know about this? 10 minutes later she replied, Dad, I'm so sorry. Ethan says it's just insurance stuff. Please don't make this harder. That phrase, don't make this harder, cut deeper than I expected. That's how toxic control works. They reframe your pain as inconvenience. I drove down to the docks to breathe. The air smelled of diesel and salt and fried clams from the lunch stand. Ramon was unloading boxes near the service door. You look like hell, he said. Family logistics. I muttered. Ah, the rich guy? I nodded. He laughed without humor. People like that think boundaries are for other people. I helped him move a crate, anything to keep my hands busy. Every drag of the box reminded me of tuition bills, late payments, double shifts, 20 years of doing what decent people do, showing up, paying debts, giving grace, and for what? To be told I was a liability to a party funded by my own overtime. By the time I got home, another message waited, this time from Ethan himself. Text only, casual tone, like we were friends planning brunch. Ethan. Hey Daniel, let's keep tomorrow simple. Venue's tight. Media might be there, so maybe best if you skip the ceremony. We'll have a private dinner after. Cool? I already took the day off. I'm coming. Ethan. That's not productive. Please think long-term. Think long-term. Translation: remember who holds the leverage. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. A man's voice introduced himself as Stephen from Vale Capital Administration, confirming that a proposed trust account for Lily Brooks had been created, pending my consent as co-signer. He left a callback number and a phrase that made my stomach flip. Mr. Vale asked that you transfer the existing savings from your joint account to streamline the process. My joint account. The one I'd built from decades of tips and service pay. He wanted it streamlined. I called back, calm at first. Stephen, I said, there must be a mistake. I haven't authorized any transfer. Oh, Mr. Vale said you'd want this, he replied, bored, paper shuffling in the background. It's already in draft. We can finalize with your digital signature. I hung up without another word. That wasn't just arrogance anymore, it was financial boundary crossing. The kind lawyers warn you about when they say, get everything in writing. And the cane to the contining. That night, I placed the brass compass on my kitchen table. Its lid was scratched from years in my pocket, but when I opened it, the needle still quivered true north. I stared at it and thought about every time I'd let people like Ethan set the map for me, every time I'd swallowed disrespect to keep peace. I wasn't just angry. I was embarrassed by how long I'd been polite. Enabler, that was the word he'd used. Like a diagnosis I'd accidentally confirmed. Maybe he was right. I'd enabled arrogance by treating it like charm. The next day, Lily called. Her voice was small, brittle. Dad, please don't argue with him again. He's under pressure. The investors are flying in. And, sweetheart, I said, when did your happiness start needing investors? Silence stretched between us. Then a whisper. I don't know anymore. That was the moment I felt the line snap, the invisible thread that keeps you pretending toxic behavior is just stress. I wasn't going to pretend anymore. When we hung up, I opened my laptop, scrolled through the catering contracts for the Harbor and Hearth events list, and found a name. Vale Wedding. Saturday, 11 a.m. setup. Ramon had the contract. which meant there was still a way in. Ethan thought he'd drawn a boundary that kept me out. He'd just drawn the map I'd use to walk back in. I don't remember turning on the light that night, but the kitchen was glowing when I came in cheap yellow from the single bulb above the sink, the kind that makes everything look lonelier than it already feels. I set the compass down on the table and stared at it, like it might blink first. The needle pointed north. Steady as always. There's something humiliating about realizing your life's work exists mostly in receipts and statements. I pulled the old binder from the top of the fridge, the one marked Lily, College. Every page was a quiet ledger of love. Tuition invoices, apartment deposits, textbooks I'd never read but paid for, handwritten notes reminding me which bill cycles overlapped, which months I'd have to skip groceries to keep her phone on. $42,000 a year. 4 years. Then grad school loans I'd co-signed. Every number had a story, and all of them ended with me wiping tables at midnight while someone else toasted promotions in the main dining room. I wasn't angry yet, just tired, bone-deep tired, around 1 a.m. I made coffee I didn't need and sat by the window, listening to the harbor quiet down. The world felt asleep except me, and the sound of my own thoughts whispering questions I didn't want to answer. Was I part of the problem? Had I raised my daughter to confuse kindness with submission because I'd modeled it for her? Had I taught her that staying calm was the same as accepting disrespect? That's the trap for people like me. You grow up believing patience is virtue, that turning the other cheek makes you noble. But there's a thin line between grace and self-erasure. Ethan had called me an enabler, and the worst part was, he wasn't entirely wrong. I'd been enabling narcissists my whole life, managers who took credit for my work, customers who treated me like background noise, friends who only called when they needed a favor. Each time, I told myself it was maturity, professionalism, humility, but humility without boundaries is just an invitation for exploitation. I thought of Lily's voice earlier, that small crack when she said, "I don't know anymore." She was losing herself in his world the same way I'd lost myself in mine, shrinking to fit the shape someone else wanted. I looked at the compass again. The lid's hinge creaked softly when I flipped it open. My father used to say, "This compass won't tell you where to go, only who you are when you choose." At the time, I thought it was just one of his sea-worn phrases. Now it felt like prophecy. I pushed aside the binder and reached for my notebook, the one where I tracked schedules for the restaurant. Instead, I started writing something different. Names, shifts, contacts, a plan. If Ethan wanted me to disappear, I'd vanish, right where he could see me. I called up Ramon's number but didn't hit dial. I knew he'd be asleep. Instead, I drafted a text and stared at it until the screen dimmed. "Ramon, I need a favor. One day only. The Vale wedding catering gig. Can we talk in the morning?" Then I typed another line beneath it but didn't send it. He's trying to erase me. I'm done letting people draw my borders. I deleted that second line before pressing send. No need to sound dramatic at 2 in the morning. But the truth of it pulsed under my skin. I wasn't thinking revenge. I was thinking reclamation. When you've been invisible long enough, there's a strange kind of calm that comes right before you step back into the light. It's not rage anymore, it's clarity. The moment you stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and start asking, "Why have I been allowing it?" I rinsed my cup, shut the lights, and left the compass open on the table. The needle glowed faintly in the dark, steady, certain. I went to bed knowing 2 things. Tomorrow I'd see Ramon, and by the weekend, Ethan Vale was going to learn what happens when a man who's spent his life serving others finally decides to serve himself. Ramon's truck was already parked behind the restaurant when I got there. It was early gray sky, damp air, seagulls fighting over scraps behind the dumpsters. The smell of coffee hit me before I even opened the back door. He was at his usual spot by the prep table, slicing lemons, the rhythm calm and steady. "You look better," he said without looking up. "That means you're up to something." "I need a favor," I said. My voice came out rougher than I meant. "It's about the Vale wedding." He stopped mid-slice, knife hanging in the air. "Daniel, no. Hear me out. I just need to be there. I won't make trouble. I'll work. Wait tables, refill glasses, clean dishes, whatever. But I'll see my daughter." He set the knife down, slow. "You want to work your daughter's wedding? You lost it, my friend." I leaned on the counter, palms flat on the cold steel. Ethan blocked me out completely. NDA, guest list, Even called my bank about transferring money I never agreed to. He's trying to erase me. This is the only way in that he can't control. Ramon studied me for a long second. You're serious. Has a heart attack. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. The catering crew is from Harbor and Hearth's contract branch, not my staff. But I know the manager, Giuseppe Torino. We worked together before I opened this place. If I call him, maybe he'll add you last minute. Thank you for watching the Selpindus. Then call him. He sighed. You realize what you're asking me to risk? Ethan Vale has money. Money talks. If he finds out I'm helping you, I'll handle it, I said. Whatever happens, it's on me. He stared again, then reached for his phone. The conversation with Giuseppe was short and half in Spanish. I caught words like mañana, evento privado, un favor grande. When he hung up, he exhaled through his nose like a man signing a dangerous deal. You're in, he said. You report to the venue at 11. Black pants, white shirt, bow tie. Giuseppe will add your name to the vendor list. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. I owe you, as in the BL. You already paid me back when you helped me with the liquor inspection last year, he said. But if this goes wrong, you disappear. Fast. I nodded. Fair. He poured coffee into 2 mugs. We sat for a moment in silence, just the hum of the fridge between us. I could feel my pulse slowing for the first time in days. That's when his phone buzzed again. He frowned at the screen, then showed me. The caller ID said E. Vale. Answer it, I said quietly. He hit speaker. Ramon Alvarez speaking. Ethan's voice came smooth and lazy, like a man calling from a yacht. Ramon, good morning. I hear you're providing service for our wedding this weekend. I just wanted to check on staffing, make sure we're aligned on professionalism. Everything's handled, Ramon said, his tone polite but distant. Good. Because I have a concern about one of your employees. Ramon's eyes flicked up to mine. Who's that? Daniel Brooks, Ethan said. Every syllable dipped in contempt. He's family, technically, but not appropriate for guest interaction. If he shows up, I'll consider it a breach of contract. You understand how fragile small business licenses can be. My stomach tightened. This was no longer just arrogance, it was blackmail. Ramon's voice stayed calm. We only hire professionals, Mr. Vale. Nothing illegal here. Ethan chuckled. Illegal? No, just inconvenient. Look, I'm trying to save everyone embarrassment. If you keep him off the roster, I'll send you a small token of appreciation, say $5,000 cash. Quick wire. Ramon looked at me and mouthed recording. His thumb brushed the side of his phone he'd turned on the voice memo app. That's generous, Ramon said flatly. But we're full. My staff list is final. Ethan's tone cooled. I'd rethink that. Health inspections can be unpredictable this time of year. Sometimes kitchens fail for reasons they didn't even know existed. I clenched my fists. Ramon didn't flinch. We passed our last inspection, he said. Twice. Anything else? Ethan hesitated, then sighed. No, that's all. Have a blessed day. The line clicked dead. Ramon let out a low whistle. You were right. The guy's toxic and stupid. He just offered me a bribe and made a threat on the same call. Do you still have the recording? I asked. He tapped his phone. Backed up to the cloud already. Written evidence, my friend. I felt something shift inside me, not rage, not even relief. Just certainty. For the first time, I wasn't the powerless one in this story. Keep it safe, I said. We might need it. Ramon smiled grimly. Ethan Vale thinks he's untouchable because he's got money and lawyers. But lawyers don't like audio files. I picked up the compass from my pocket, thumb tracing the engraving on the back. Find your way, no matter who blocks the road. My father's words, back when boundaries meant honor, not status. Ramon looked at it. Your north still working? Better than ever, I said. Tomorrow, I walk right through his rules. He laughed. Then make sure your shoes are polished. You're about to serve justice. The next morning, the air smelled like old rain and burnt coffee. I barely slept, replaying Ethan's voice from that phone call, the way he dangled money like it could buy morality. I kept hearing his words, health inspections can be unpredictable. It wasn't just arrogance, it was the language of control. Ramon called around 9. You need to meet someone, he said. Friend of mine. Knows how to deal with people who think laws bend for them. Her name was Maya Chen. a corporate attorney who used to work for one of Boston's biggest compliance firms before opening her own practice in Portland. Ramon said she was sharp, didn't waste time, and more importantly, had a long memory for bullies. We met at her office above a bakery that smelled like butter and cinnamon. The contrast was almost poetic. Sweetness below, confrontation upstairs. She greeted me with a firm handshake. "Ramon filled me in," she said. "You're the father of the bride, correct?" "Correct," I said. "And apparently the villain in my future son-in-law's PR narrative." Her lips curved just slightly. "Let's talk about that recording first." Ramon had already emailed it to her. She plugged in her earbuds, listened in silence, and then hit pause. "Classic coercion," she said, "offering money to influence staffing, followed by implied retaliation. This isn't just unethical, it's illegal under Maine's business code." I hadn't realized I was holding my breath until then. "So what happens now?" "That depends," she said. "Do you want revenge or leverage?" "I don't want to destroy him," I said, surprising myself with how true that felt. "I just want him to stop erasing people." "Then we use the tape strategically," she said. "Not in court yet. Think of it as insurance. It protects you and Ramon if he escalates." She took off her glasses and met my eyes directly. "But let's talk about you. What he's doing isn't just bullying, it's boundary testing. Men like that poke until someone finally says no. I've been saying yes for 20 years, I said. To everyone. Managers, customers, now him. I thought being agreeable made life easier." She smiled soft, not condescending. "That's the trap, Mr. Brooks. When you grow up believing harmony equals safety, you confuse peacekeeping with self-erasure. This right, the cly." Ramon said something similar, I muttered. "He called it the cost of staying polite." She nodded. "Exactly. And here's the thing about narcissists, they thrive on silence. The moment you assert a boundary, they panic. You saw that last night when Ethan tried to control the situation through back channels." "Yeah," I said quietly. "He's scared I might show up and ruin his narrative." "Good," she said, matter of fact. "Fear means you're unpredictable now. And unpredictability breaks their rhythm." I looked at the compass resting in my palm. "I just want to be there for my daughter." "Then do it," she said. "Show up. Professionally. Legally. Let him underestimate you." 2. There was something grounding about her tone, calm, surgical. She spoke like a therapist, disguised as a lawyer. Maybe that's what I needed. Someone who understood that boundaries weren't about aggression. They were about clarity. She opened a file on her laptop. "I'll draft a short memo summarizing the recording and email it to you both. Keep it off social media. Off the record, this gives you cover if he tries to retaliate. If he sends any written threats or attempts to interfere with your work contract, forward them to me. It becomes a harassment case." I nodded, absorbing every word. "So, I go to the wedding. I work. I keep my head down." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "No, you hold your head up. There's a difference." That line hit me harder than I expected. For years, I'd been confusing humility with shrinking. "I'll invoice Ramon," she said, then paused. "Actually, no, let this one be personal." "What do you mean?" She closed the laptop. "My mother was barred from my aunt's wedding. Her husband's family thought she wasn't classy enough, immigrant background, factory job, all that nonsense. My mother cried for days. I swore I'd never watch another good person get erased because someone with a fancy title decided they didn't fit the picture. I sat there, the weight of her words settling in. "You're taking this case because of that?" She nodded. "Partly, and because I like seeing narcissists choke on their own PR. I couldn't help but laugh. "You're good. I'm practical," she said. "Tomorrow you're working the wedding. That means you're protected by labor law. If anyone tells you to leave, they're in breach of contract. Don't argue. Just note the time and their exact words. We'll handle the rest." "Understood." She walked me to the door. "One more thing, Daniel." "Yeah?" "Don't confuse revenge with self-respect. They look similar at first, but only one helps you sleep at night." Outside, the air was sharp with salt and the smell of the sea. I pulled the compass from my pocket again. North still pointed home, even when the world tried to twist the map. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. I wasn't plotting payback, I was reclaiming space. Ethan Vale could threaten, bribe, or posture all he wanted. The difference now was, I had proof. a plan, and something far more dangerous to his ego: composure. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be invisible. I'd be exactly where I belonged on my terms, within the law, and with boundaries he couldn't cross anymore. Friday afternoon came gray and windy, the kind of weather that makes you check your pockets twice before stepping out. I arrived early at the event venue, a cliffside estate that looked more like a luxury museum than a place for vows. Workers moved around like clockwork, sound techs adjusting cables, florists carrying towers of white orchids, a catering truck unloading trays. I was one of them now, part of the machinery. I signed in under Harbor and Hearth Catering, showed my driver's license, and got my vendor badge. For a second, I looked at it: plastic, laminated, with my name printed in small letters beneath: staff. It was supposed to sting, but instead it felt strangely freeing. For once, no one expected me to impress. Giuseppe, the catering manager, recognized me instantly. "Ramon called," he said, clapping my shoulder. "You'll handle the main dining area. Just stay sharp and let the wedding planner handle the rich people." I smiled. I've been handling rich people my entire career. By noon, the place looked like something out of a magazine. Silk-draped chairs facing the ocean, tables dressed in linen so white they hurt your eyes, and a glass dance floor suspended over the lawn. It was perfect. Coldly perfect. The kind of perfection that smells expensive but feels empty. Around 1, I heard voices echoing from the hall, Lily's light laugh and Ethan's lower tone behind it. My stomach tightened. I wasn't ready to see her yet, not like this, not in uniform. But when I turned, she was already walking toward me. "Dad," she said, eyes wide. She looked beautiful even in jeans and a sweater, hair tied up loosely as she walked the venue with the planner. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, pretending casual. They needed extra hands. Ethan appeared a few steps behind her, expression stiffening when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" I kept my voice even. "Working. You're not serious." His laugh was small and sharp, like a knife on porcelain. "You got yourself hired?" "I didn't get myself anything," I said. "Ramon's team needed someone." I filled a gap. Lily looked between us, already sensing the storm. "Ethan, don't." "No, this is manipulation," he said, turning toward her like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "He's doing this to make me look bad, to play the victim. It's emotional blackmail, Lily. This is exactly what I meant about boundaries." I felt the word boundaries hit the air like poison. Gaslighting at its finest. Take someone's healthy, need to show up and twist it into pathology. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm here to do my job. Nothing more." Ethan crossed his arms, smirking like he'd caught me in a lie. "Your job? Your job is bussing tables while I'm trying to host senators and investors. You think that's normal?" "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "But it's honest." "Intentions." He stepped closer. "You want attention. That's all this is." Lily grabbed his arm. "Stop it." He ignored her. "My wedding is not your redemption arc." For a second, I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how rehearsed he sounded, like he'd practiced that line in a mirror. "Ethan," I said quietly, "I've worked 30 years without ever needing a redemption arc. What I need is to see my daughter get married. You don't have the right to deny that." His jaw clenched. "I have the right to protect her from toxicity." I tilted my head slightly. "Then maybe start with yourself." The silence that followed was loud. Even the workers nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Lily's eyes shimmered, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, both of you, not here." Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He took it out like a lifeline and walked off toward the terrace, muttering something about schedule changes. I stood there with Lily, the air between us fragile and heavy. "I didn't know you were coming," she said softly. "I didn't either," I admitted. "But if I didn't find a way, I'd regret it forever." She wiped her eyes quickly. "He's just stressed. The planning, the guests." "Sweetheart," I said gently. "Stress doesn't excuse cruelty. It exposes it." She looked away, out toward the ocean. The waves crashed below the cliff, steady and endless. "You're still coming tomorrow?" "I'll be here," I said. "But don't worry about me. Focus on your vows. Make them about love, not approval." She nodded, blinking back more tears. "You always make everything sound simple." "Because it is simple," I said. "People just complicate it when they forget who they are." The planner called her name, and she went back inside, her shoulders small against the grand backdrop of Ethan's world. I watched her go, then went back to arranging glassware, each crystal flute catching the light like tiny mirrors of restraint. Ethan returned 20 minutes later, face tight, voice clipped. He didn't look at me, but I could feel the hostility radiating off him like heat. He whispered something to the event coordinator, who shot me a nervous glance. Whatever he was planning next, it wouldn't be subtle, but that was fine. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Every time he tried to humiliate me, he only made me smaller in his world but stronger in mine. The kind of strength that doesn't shout or threaten. It just waits. And tomorrow, waiting was exactly what I'd do. Saturday came too early. The sky over the Maine coast was the color of pewter, and the wind carried the smell of seaweed and champagne, the strange mix of nature and money. I parked behind the catering trucks and slipped into the black and white uniform Giuseppe had laid out for me. The bow tie felt tight around my neck, but I reminded myself, armor, not costume. Inside, the ballroom was glowing. White roses everywhere, a string quartet rehearsing near the archway, servers whispering final instructions. Guests were already arriving in suits that cost more than my rent. The air hummed with that polished kind of laughter, the sound of people who've never worried about overdraft fees. I started with what I knew best. Work, refill glasses, smile when spoken to, move unseen. I'd spent my life mastering invisibility. Today, it was my disguise. Across the room, I caught sight of Lily. She looked radiant, simple dress, hair in soft waves, smile a little too bright to be real. When our eyes met, she gave me a quick nod, almost secretive, as if to say, I see you. I wanted to freeze that second forever. Ethan stood beside her, tux perfectly tailored, ego perfectly inflated. He greeted guests with that charm you only learn at business schools and private dinners, the kind that hides the rot underneath. As the ceremony began, I stayed near the back, serving water and trying not to draw attention. The vows were short, rehearsed. Ethan's ring slipped easily onto her finger, and for a moment, I tried to believe this was love, not strategy. The reception followed fast music, clinking glasses, the first wave of toasts. I moved among the tables, refilling champagne, catching bits of conversation about startups, mergers, and the latest tax loopholes. Every so often, someone would smile at me, polite, distracted, the kind of smile that forgets your face before it finishes. Then, halfway through dinner, Ethan tapped his glass with a silver spoon. The chatter died instantly. He stood up at the head table, smiling the way men smile right before they twist the knife. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate what I can only describe as the most meaningful partnership of my life. Polite applause. I kept moving, pouring champagne. Eyes down, he went on, his tone smooth and performative. We're surrounded by brilliance here, leaders, innovators, people who build the future. It's humbling to be among such success stories. Then, I felt it. The shift. That subtle turn in the air right before a storm. Ethan paused, looked across the room, and let his smile harden. And of course, not everyone gets to be part of that story. Some people exist to serve it. A few guests exchanged uncertain glances. He let the silence hang. Take this man, for example. His hand gestured toward me. I froze mid-pour. Daniel Brooks, hard worker, dedicated. Been in the service industry for 30 years. There at Beltiri, the room went still. He laughed lightly, like it was all in good fun. That's commitment, right? The man's poured more drinks than anyone in this town. Still bussing tables, still grinding. It's inspiring, in its own way. Someone near the front shifted uncomfortably. Lily's face had gone pale. I placed the bottle on the nearest table and straightened. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, unnaturally calm. Ethan continued, voice growing louder, slicker. We talk a lot about ambition in this world, about progress. But sometimes, people mistake persistence for purpose. They keep showing up, even when life clearly told them to quit. A nervous chuckle rippled through the crowd. I looked at him, and he looked right back, waiting for me to react, waiting for the explosion. But I'd already learned that silence is more powerful than shouting. I met his gaze, nodded once, and picked up the bottle again. Champagne? I asked the woman nearest to me. Her eyes darted between us. Yes, please. I poured smoothly. No tremor, no word wasted. Around the room, Whispers began to ripple, small and sharp. The more I stayed calm, the smaller Ethan looked. Lily stood, voice trembling but clear. "Ethan, please stop." He ignored her, eyes locked on me. "See, that's what separates leaders from followers. Some people make things happen. Others just serve those who do. Hell, so that is the breast and not best." And that was his fatal mistake. He said it like a punchline, expecting laughter. But the room didn't laugh. It recoiled. The cruelty was too naked now, too obvious. I set the bottle down gently, folded the napkin over my arm, and looked him straight in the eye. "You know," I said quietly, "there's dignity in serving. The world doesn't spin without the people you overlook." Gasps scattered like falling glass. I didn't shout, didn't raise my tone. I didn't need to. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He glanced at the crowd and saw it the shift. Faces that once admired him now avoided eye contact. Even his own business partners looked embarrassed. Lily's voice cracked the silence. "Enough." She turned to the guests, tears welling in her eyes. "This is supposed to be a wedding, not a speech about who matters more." The room stayed frozen. Then, someone near the back started clapping, slow, deliberate. It spread. Not loud but firm. Guests nodded awkwardly, not sure what they were applauding, maybe decency itself. I gave a small nod to Lily, then turned away, walking toward the service door. My hands were steady, my breathing even. Inside, in the quiet of the prep kitchen, I finally exhaled. The adrenaline burned off like fog in the morning sun. I wasn't humiliated. He was. The difference was clear. That's the thing about narcissists. They think power comes from volume, from the crowd's attention. But real power comes from restraint, from knowing exactly when not to speak. And in that silence, I'd finally taken mine back. 10 minutes after I walked out of that ballroom, I thought it was over. I thought I'd played my part, taken my stand, and that Ethan would spend the rest of the night pretending I didn't exist. But the universe, apparently, had a sense of irony and better timing than I ever could. While I was in the prep kitchen washing glasses to calm my hands, I heard a sudden commotion. Voices, gasps, then applause, quick and confused. Giuseppe poked his head through the door, his face caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. "You might want to see this," he said. When I stepped back into the ballroom, every head was turned toward the far wall, toward a massive flat-screen TV mounted above the bar. A guest had accidentally switched it from the wedding slideshow to a local film channel, and there, filling the screen, was a younger version of me, 28 years old, Navy uniform. The movie Atlantic Crossing. Someone near the front pointed at the screen, then at me. "Wait, that's him. That's the waiter." It spread like wildfire. Gasps, laughter, disbelief. Phones lifted. People Googled my name. I stood frozen for half a heartbeat before the absurdity hit me like a warm wave. The film had been running for 10 minutes. But that scene, the one where my character delivers a monologue about dignity and sacrifice, couldn't have been timed better if I'd planned it. Ethan's champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor. "He's on TV," someone said. He was an actor. There was no hiding now. I walked forward, slow and deliberate, until I was standing near the center of the room. All eyes were on me, not as a servant, not as a prop, but as something they couldn't categorize. "Yes," I said finally, my voice calm. "That's me. A long time ago, I was an actor. I left the business when my daughter was born." Lily's hands flew to her mouth. "Dad, I traded stages for steady paychecks," I continued, "because I wanted her to have choices I never did. And I don't regret a single day of it." The room fell completely silent. Even the quartet had stopped playing. For a moment, no one knew where to look at me, or at Ethan, who stood frozen beside the head table, color draining from his face. "Why didn't you tell us?" one guest asked softly. "Because it didn't matter," I said. "Who I was then doesn't define who I am now. Work is work, service is honorable." Then I turned to Ethan. His lips moved, searching for something, an excuse, a counterpunch, but nothing came out. He'd built his world on perception, and right now, that world was crumbling under the weight of reality. This man publicly humiliated someone who gave up fame for family. Another guest whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "That's who he really is." The words rippled through the crowd. Conversations flared, some sympathetic, some scathing. Within minutes, Ethan's social circle, The same people he'd bragged about impressing were pulling back, embarrassed to be associated with him. And Lily, she walked straight toward me. Tears streaked her makeup, but she was smiling. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know how much you'd given up." I wiped a tear from her cheek. "Sweetheart, you were worth every moment." The applause started small, one person near the back, then another, then the whole room rising to their feet. It wasn't about celebrity. It was about decency, about seeing someone stand in quiet dignity after being stripped of it in front of everyone. Maya's words from the day before echoed in my mind. Don't confuse revenge with self-respect. Only one helps you sleep at night. And for the first time in years, I understood exactly what she meant. This wasn't revenge, it was balance being restored. When the clapping died down, Ethan finally spoke. His voice shook. "I didn't know. I thought that I was beneath you?" I asked gently. He swallowed hard. "I was wrong." Lily turned to him, her face unreadable. "You didn't just insult my father. You showed me exactly what you value, and it's not family." He looked at her, panic flickering behind his eyes. "Please, Lily." No," she said firmly. "You can apologize, but that doesn't fix what you did." There it was, the moment of power shifting completely. For years, Ethan had used control disguised as confidence. Now, stripped of his image, he was just a man exposed in front of everyone who mattered to him. I put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's not make this uglier," I said quietly. "He's learned enough for one night." She turned back to me, tears falling again. "Dance with me, Dad." And so we did. The music restarted softly, the quartet finding a melody that didn't belong to any genre, just something warm and human. We moved slowly across the floor, father and daughter, the room still buzzing with the electricity of truth. I could feel the guests watching, whispering, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I was just being. After the song ended, I slipped away to the bar for a cup of coffee. The same way I always ended long shifts. Steam rose from the cup, curling like smoke in the light. I thought about Maya, about her mother, about every person who'd been told they weren't enough because their worth couldn't be measured in wealth. That night wasn't about humiliation. It was about visibility, about taking up space in a world that tries so hard to erase the quiet ones. Later, Ethan approached one last time, pale and subdued. "I'll be making a public apology," he said. "Not for optics, for real." "Good," I said. "Because redemption starts where excuses end." He nodded, unsure whether it was forgiveness or dismissal, but maybe it didn't matter. Some lessons have to hurt to heal. When I finally left the venue, the sky had cleared. The ocean was dark and endless, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel small next to it. I felt aligned with myself, with truth, with the quiet power of simply refusing to disappear. Ethan Vale had spent his life performing control, but that night, I took mine back, one unspoken boundary, one calm truth, one quiet victory at a time. The morning after the wedding felt unreal. I woke up before sunrise, the kind of quiet hour where even regret seems too tired to speak. The tux, still hanging by the door, smelled faintly of roses and spilled champagne. My phone was buried under a dozen unread messages, each preview line the same mixture of apology, admiration, or gossip. I brewed coffee and sat by the window, watching the ocean turn from slate gray to pale gold. It felt like the world had tilted slightly, like the balance I'd lost years ago had quietly returned overnight. Around 8, Ramon called first. "You made the news," he said. Some guest uploaded the clip to Reddit. The headline says, "Groom publicly humiliates waiter. Instantly regrets it when he finds out who he really is." It's everywhere. I laughed softly. "Of course it is. Half the internet thinks you planned it." "I didn't," I said, "but I'm not sorry they think I did." "Sieve that back." Ramon chuckled, then grew serious. "You okay, hermano?" "I'm good," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. "Better than I've been in a long time." He hesitated. "You know," Giuseppe said, "Ethan called him last night, tried to apologize for the scene. Did he accept it?" Ramon snorted. "Giuseppe said he doesn't negotiate with narcissists." I almost cried. We both laughed, the kind of laugh that heals something. After the call, I scrolled through the messages. Maya had texted, "Don't talk to reporters. Let silence do the work. Proud of you." And below that, another one. My mother would have loved this story. I smiled. Somehow, that meant more than any apology Ethan could offer. Then I found Lily's message. It wasn't long, just a photo of her and me dancing, captioned, "I understand now." I stared at it for a long time, the glow of the screen reflecting in my coffee. Later that day, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, Ethan stood there. No entourage, no arrogance. Just a man in yesterday's suit, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. "I needed to say it in person," he said. "Not as damage control, not because of social media, just because I was wrong." I crossed my arms. About what exactly? He swallowed hard. About worth. About what matters. I built my life on the illusion that success means hierarchy, that people have to fit into neat categories. You destroyed that illusion in 10 minutes. "Good," I said. "Illusions deserve to break." He nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "Lily hasn't spoken to me since last night. I don't blame her. I want to change. I don't know where to start." Quote, I studied him for a long moment. "Start by listening," I said. "To people you think are beneath you. You might learn who you really are." He nodded again. "I'll try." "That's all you can do," I said quietly. He extended his hand. For a moment, I thought about refusing. But then I remembered what Maya had told me. Revenge is a loop. Closure is a door. I shook his hand. His grip was tentative, almost grateful. When he left, the silence that followed didn't feel empty, it felt earned. That afternoon, I took a walk through the old part of town, the one with cracked sidewalks and fading murals. I passed the small independent theater where Atlantic Crossing had premiered 30 years ago. The poster in the window was faded, the glass slightly fogged, but the title was still there. James Collins, my old stage name, printed in bold serif font. I stood there for a while, watching my younger self frozen in that pose of determination and youth. I didn't feel nostalgia anymore, just peace. I wasn't chasing the man in that poster. I'd already met him again last night, and he wasn't an actor. He was a father. By evening, I was back home when my phone buzzed again, an email from Maya. Subject line, "Follow-up." She'd attached a link, a short clip from a talk show, a panel of commentators discussing the waiter story. One of them, a woman with a soft southern accent, said, "It's not about fame. It's about decency, about how real class isn't measured in bank accounts but in empathy." Underneath, Maya had written, "You didn't just win back your dignity, you reminded people what it looks like." I closed the laptop and sat back, letting those words settle. For most of my life, I'd believed quiet people had no power, that staying invisible was survival. But now I understood. Invisibility is only protection until you decide to be seen. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on the balcony, watching the last streaks of light fade over the ocean. Somewhere out there, Ethan was probably drafting his apology. Lily was beginning her new chapter, and Maya was finishing another case for someone who'd been told they didn't belong. And me? I finally felt free from the need to prove anything. The compass rested on the table beside me, its needle still pointing north. Maybe boundaries were like that too, not walls, but guides. A reminder that no matter who tried to twist the map, I could always find my way back to myself. It's strange how silence can sound different after everything changes. A month after the wedding, my apartment didn't feel empty anymore, it felt earned. The walls were the same beige they'd always been. The coffee machine still sputtered every morning, like it resented being awake. But there was a new kind of peace in the air. I'd gone back to work at the restaurant. Some of the younger servers whispered when I passed, not out of mockery but awe. They'd seen the viral video of the waiter who turned out to be a forgotten actor, humiliated in front of hundreds, who somehow walked away taller. For a few days, customers came just to shake my hand or take pictures. The manager wanted to put my name on a featured storyboard. I told him no. I wasn't interested in being a novelty. Fame had already taken its pound of flesh. But one afternoon, as I was polishing glassware before the dinner rush, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a letter. Handwritten, neat, deliberate. "Mr. Brooks, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to thank you. Because of that night, I started therapy. For the first time in my life, I'm learning to listen instead of dominate. I don't know if Lily will ever take me back, but I'm learning to be the kind of man who deserves the chance." Ethan. I read it twice, then set it down. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt calm, because the truth was, I hadn't destroyed him. Life had just finally shown him the mirror he'd spent years avoiding. That same week, Maya called. "You're officially internet folklore now," she said. "They're using your story in a podcast about workplace dignity." I laughed. "Let's hope they spell my name right." "I'm serious," she said. "People are calling it the waiter's compass. It's becoming a metaphor for boundaries, integrity, all that good stuff." I looked at the compass sitting on my desk, the one that had belonged to my father. Its brass edges were worn, the needle steady as ever. "It's funny," I said. "That little thing was never about direction. It was about return. It always brings you back to where you're supposed to be." Maya went quiet for a moment. "You realize what you did, right? You didn't just take your power back. You modeled what healthy anger looks like, contained, precise, and final." "Healthy anger," I repeated. "That's a new one." "It's rare," she said. "And it's contagious." After we hung up, I sat by the window again, the same place I'd sat that morning after the wedding. Outside, kids were playing by the docks, chasing each other with paper boats and soda cans for sales. I thought about Lily. How she'd been calling more lately, checking in. Not out of guilt, but love. She told me she and Ethan were taking time apart, and that she'd started volunteering at a legal clinic Maya recommended. "She's helping women who've been manipulated out of inheritance by controlling partners," she'd said. "Feels full circle." She'd said, "Sounds like healing," I told her. It was. All of it. Because the thing about boundaries is they don't just protect you from others. They teach others how to protect themselves. Weeks passed. Life resumed its ordinary rhythm. I worked my shifts, visited Ramon's restaurant on Sundays, even started mentoring a couple of the new servers. One of them, a shy kid named Luis, asked me, "How did you stay so calm when that guy insulted you in front of everyone?" I smiled. Because he was performing, and I stopped playing the role he needed me to fill. Luis frowned. "So, you walked off script?" "Exactly," I said. "Never let a narcissist write your lines." He grinned. "That's badass." Maybe it was. Maybe it was just growing up late. On the anniversary of my father's death, I visited his grave for the first time in years. I placed the compass at the base of the headstone, the brass gleaming under the afternoon sun. "It's done," I said softly. "She's married. She's safe. I did right by her." We wadded to Crated to Starcad. The wind picked up from the coast, carrying that salt-sweet smell of Maine air. For a second, I imagined my father laughing deep and low, the kind of laugh that said, "You figured it out, kid." That night, I wrote Lily a letter. Not because there was anything left unsaid, but because I wanted her to have something tangible. Something she could read years from now when life tested her boundaries again. "Sweetheart, never apologize for wanting peace, but don't confuse it with silence. The world will always have people who mistake kindness for weakness. Let them. Your power isn't in proving them wrong, it's in staying grounded when they try to shake you. And if you ever lose your way, just find north again." It's never moved. "Love, Dad." I sealed it and left it on her porch the next morning. Then I drove down to the harbor before my shift, parked the truck, and just sat there watching the water move like glass under the dawn. No soundtrack, no applause, just the steady rhythm of waves and my own breathing. For the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting for a role, a break, or a reckoning. I already had everything that mattered. Dignity, peace, and the unshakable knowledge that I'd earned both the hard way. Maybe that's the real revenge story. Not burning someone else's house down, but finally building your own. It's been 6 months since that night, and sometimes I still catch myself replaying it, the clinking of glasses, the stunned silence, the way the air in the room shifted when truth finally caught up with arrogance. Not because I miss it, but because it reminds me of what happens when you stop asking for permission to exist. Life has settled into something quieter now. The internet moved on, as it always does. The viral posts turned into think pieces, and then into memes, and finally into silence. But the silence feels good. It feels like closure. Ethan and Lily finalized their separation last month. She called me afterward, her voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. "I think I needed to see who he really was," she said. "And maybe I needed to see who I was too, someone who kept apologizing for other people's behavior." "You learned," I told her. "That's all that matters." She laughed softly. You sound like Maya now. Maybe she's rubbing off on me, I said. Maya and I had kept in touch too. She'd invited me to speak at a local college event about workplace dignity, something she called the ethics of service. I'd refused at first, saying I wasn't anyone's role model. She countered, Exactly. That's why they'll listen. So I went. The lecture hall smelled like chalk and nervous ambition. I told the students about boundaries, about how silence can either protect or destroy you, depending on who you give it to. I told them about the compass, the letter to Lily, the night I decided to stop shrinking. When I finished, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Brooks, she said, do you ever regret walking away from fame? I smiled. No. Fame is a megaphone. Character is the voice. Lose the voice, and the megaphone's useless. She nodded like she was storing it somewhere deep. Maybe that's what stories are really for, not entertainment, but inheritance. After the talk, Maya met me outside with 2 coffees. You were good, she said. I was terrified, I admitted. That's how you know it mattered. We walked along the harbor, watching the sunset paint the water in strokes of orange and violet. She asked if I'd ever thought about acting again. I told her no, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. I'd already told the most important story of my life, and it didn't need a camera. The next morning, I received an email from a student who'd been in the audience. My father's a janitor. I used to feel embarrassed telling people that. After hearing your story, I told him I'm proud of him for the first time in my life. Thank you. I must have read it 10 times before replying. That's when it hit me. Real revenge isn't public. It isn't dramatic. It's when your truth echoes far enough to rewrite someone else's shame. A few weeks later, I went back to the same spot by the ocean where I'd stood that night after the wedding. The compass still sat in my pocket, cool against my palm. North hadn't changed, but maybe I had. I thought about all the years I'd confused peace with avoidance, humility with erasure. The truth is, I'd spent half my life apologizing for taking up space. That's what people like Ethan count on your guilt, but guilt can't coexist with clarity. Once you know who you are, you stop auditioning for acceptance. I closed my eyes and breathed in the salt air. Somewhere, behind the sound of the waves, I could still hear my daughter's voice from that night. You gave up everything for me. No, I thought. I gave up pretending. That was the difference. That was the win. Later that week, Maya and I met again for dinner. She told me she'd officially named her foundation North Point Legal Aid, inspired by a story about a compass and a man who refused to disappear. She said with a grin. I raised my glass. Then here's to finding North again. She smiled. And staying there. It wasn't romantic. It didn't need to be. It was 2 people who'd both seen what happens when power is abused, and had decided to spend the rest of their lives doing the opposite. Now, every time I look at that compass, I think of all the people who'll never know my name but might carry a piece of my story anyway. The quiet ones, the servers, the caretakers, the ones who keep things running while others take credit. The real backbone of every celebration, every company, every so-called success story. We don't always get the applause, but sometimes, dignity itself is the standing ovation, and that's enough. A year has passed since that night, the night that used to feel like a wound but now feels more like a scar I'm oddly proud of. Time didn't erase what happened. It just softened the edges. Life went on, and somewhere along the way, it became mine again. These days, the restaurant's rhythm feels almost meditative. The clatter of plates, the murmur of conversation, the quiet hum of being useful, it all fits like muscle memory. Sometimes a guest recognizes me from that old movie, or, more often now, from the waiter's compass story. They'll whisper, "Are you the guy from the wedding?" And I'll just smile and say, "Used to be," because that's the thing. What once defined me no longer owns me. Lily moved to Boston a few months ago. She's working at a nonprofit that helps families navigate inheritance disputes and financial abuse. She calls it Restoration Legal Services. Said she got the idea from Maya, who now sits on their board. They invited me to the opening ceremony last month. I wore the same vest I'd worn to her wedding, minus the bow tie, just to remind myself how far a man can travel without changing clothes. When she took the stage to give her speech, she started with, "Everything I know about fairness. I learned from watching my father stay kind when it would have been easier to be cruel." I couldn't look up after that. My throat burned. My eyes did too. After the event, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. "You taught me that forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook," she said. "It's about not letting them hold the rope anymore." Heaven the money was lugzide. I told her she should be the one giving philosophy lectures now. She laughed. "Don't tempt me." Ethan didn't come to the event, but I heard through Ramon that he's still seeing his therapist. He joined some mentorship group for young entrepreneurs, apparently learning the difference between leadership and control. I hope he figures it out, not because he deserves redemption, but because the world doesn't need another man mistaking status for worth. Maya, meanwhile, has turned her little firm into something bigger. We still talk once a week, usually about her cases, sometimes about life. She tells me she's amazed by how many people reached out after the Waiter's Compass story aired on a national podcast. "You realize," she said once, "that you accidentally became the blueprint for emotional boundaries?" I told her that if that's true, it's the first time in history a waiter became a manual for mental health. She laughed for 5 minutes straight. "Sometimes, when the restaurant closes early, I take the long way home down the cliffside road that curves along the water. There's a spot where you can see both the town and the ocean, a perfect halfway point between land and horizon. That's where I keep the compass now, in a small wooden box beneath a bench facing north. It doesn't need to guide me anymore. It just needs to remind me where I found myself. I visit it every few weeks, usually with a cup of coffee in hand. I sit there until the sun dips low and the air starts to smell like salt and pine. I think about how simple it all was in the end. Stand your ground, speak softly, and let the truth do the shouting. You know, people always imagine revenge as fire and fury as dramatic, cinematic justice. But the older I get, the more I realize that real revenge doesn't burn others. It rebuilds you, quietly, brick by brick. The best kind of victory doesn't demand applause. It looks like peace. It sounds like silence. And it feels like finally being able to breathe without checking if someone else approves. The world didn't change after that night, but I did. And that was enough. Sometimes when new servers start at the restaurant, I see versions of my younger self in them. Eager, anxious, careful not to offend. They ask me for advice, expecting tips about service etiquette. Instead, I tell them this: never let a uniform convince you that your worth depends on who you're serving. Whether you're holding a tray or a title, your dignity is the same weight. The only difference is who notices it. They usually nod politely, not quite understanding yet. That's fine. One day, life will remind them what I mean. Last week, I got a letter from a film student in Chicago who'd seen Atlantic Crossing. She wrote, "Your performance made me cry, but your story made me braver. Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to start over." I folded it carefully and placed it in the same drawer where I keep the compass. Maybe someday Lily will find them both and understand that every story worth telling begins with losing something, an illusion, a title, a version of yourself, and ends with finding something stronger. The compass doesn't point north for everyone. For me, it points home. And home isn't a place anymore. It's peace. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this is that peace isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you defend, one boundary at a time. For years, I confused politeness with kindness, silence with maturity, and endurance with strength. But the truth is, strength doesn't always mean holding it together. Sometimes it means walking away, saying, "Enough," and refusing to let someone else narrate your worth. Protecting your mental health isn't selfish, it's self-respect in action. It's realizing that no title, no relationship, and no paycheck is worth your sanity. When people try to guilt you for choosing peace, it's usually because they benefited from your lack of boundaries. And once you start enforcing them, they call it change. When really, it's just you returning to yourself. I used to think closure came from someone else's apology. Now I know it comes from within, from deciding you've learned the lesson and don't need the pain anymore. Healing doesn't look heroic. It looks quiet, like drinking coffee without anxiety in your chest. So, tell me, have you ever had to reclaim your peace from someone who thought they owned your story? How did you do it? Or maybe you're still in the middle of it right now, learning how to say no without guilt. If so, you're not alone. What's the hardest boundary you've ever had to set, and how did it change you? Let's talk about it.